Hey everyone. So, for those who are not able to attend our webinar on April 24th about the importance of storytelling for nonprofit and purpose driven organizations, we put together a little 15-minute highlight reel of the webinar with bits that we think can still be of help for development and marketing folks, and frankly, anyone looking to use story to further their organization's mission. Also, because of the popularity of our free 30-minute story consultation we offered to attendees back in April, we're opening that offer back up. So if you missed out last time, but would like to talk with our team about telling your organization's story, then we encourage you to click the scheduling link in the email and let's set up a time to talk. Now, on to the webinar highlights. We hope you enjoy. So we actually all started making films together over a decade ago. And the three of us started a journey of making documentaries together. Our first film was about a fisherman poet that went on to go to a number of film festivals. And yeah, we just started making movies together. And as of now, of just the three of us actually working all on the same film, we've made 7 films together. But while we were making these films, we were at the time working mostly in the commercial and branded content space for brands. But we would occasionally get the chance to make films for nonprofit and purpose-driven organizations. And whenever we did, we found that the work was not just rewarding from an artistic and like human perspective, the result was also just always better. And we started realizing it was just because it was more authentic, right? We weren't making up fiction to sell a product. We were just telling a story that existed in the real world. And over time, we just started to ask ourselves a little bit more, is there like a way we can just make films for nonprofits? And so we decided to take a stab at it. And that's how we got to 76 Degrees West. The name 76 Degrees West actually comes from the wild realization that Guille and I had about a decade into our friendship that we were both born on the 76-degree West Meridian line. It actually connects Peru and Ithaca, New York, where I was born. I am half Peruvian as well. But we were born in 2 different cities in 2 different countries and somehow just connected from the very beginning. And for us, our filmmaking philosophy is that filmmaking is all about connection. So despite the name being a mouthful, it was just the perfect representation of what we do and why we do it. Our mission at 76 Degrees West is pretty simple. We use the craft of filmmaking to help nonprofit and purpose-driven organizations tell their stories, stories that can connect with audiences and make them feel something. The reason for that is we believe that visual storytelling is one of the most powerful ways to communicate emotion. And from our experience, emotion, more than anything, is what moves people to care about something, to connect, and to take action. So I'm going to start it off with a really big statement. Everything is a story. And what do I mean by that? I mean, everything that we understand and how we see the world is through the lens of story. It's how we understand ourselves. We are the main characters in our own story. You get home from a day of work, your loved one asks you, how was work? You tell a story, right? We've been conditioned to tell stories and to understand stories since we were children. We came home from school, dropped our backpack off the table. Your mom or dad or whoever is asking, hey, how was school? What happened? You tell a story, right? So throughout all of human history, from cave paintings to any joke, to advertising, to campaign speeches, to every religion, right? We understand all these through stories. It's how we've always communicated. So bringing that back to nonprofit and purpose-driven organizations, even an annual report tells a story, whether it means to or not. So we're just kind of thinking that more like the sooner you can lean into telling what you do through the lens of story and why what you do matters, the sooner you're going to start connecting to people on an emotional and evolutionary level. We found that the return on investment in visual storytelling is versatile and powerful. The final film that you get is an amazing tool in itself for reaching a broader community, for engagement, for past donor engagement, for prospective donor engagement, and really just for overall increasing the impact of your mission. But also the process to make a film, right? Because it's often overlooked as a great opportunity in itself for engagement with your community and with prospective donors, right? It can be a really fun and exciting prospect to pitch a film to a donor that, tells your mission and allows them, if they give a certain amount, to become an executive producer, right? They get their name on the silver screen. If the film makes it to film festivals or to any screenings or events, they get to be there. They get to be a part of something that they directly had an impact in. And we found that it can be really effective. Stories do what stats and numbers can't. They show the real impact of what you do instead of just talking about it. And a well-told story can humanize the data in your annual report, right? It can put a face to a problem or an issue. Emotion is what ultimately leads to action. People don't give or act because of numbers, unfortunately. It's just not how our brains work. We're wired into story. People give because they care. And when a story moves them, they become part of that story as well.
I want to share with you the story behind one of our films. Not just how we made it, but what we learned and how those lessons might apply to your organization if you're thinking about using storytelling to reach people in a deeper way. Just so you know, a character-driven story focuses on a real person, no? Their emotions, their decisions, their everyday life. Instead of explaining an issue from the outside, you let the audience experience it through the eyes of someone living it. So we knew that a narrative story short, not a branded content, could get us into film festivals, cultural institutions, media platforms, etc., etc. Places that would never find, places that would never feature a standard organizational video, because usually when it's something branded, most of places don't take it, no? So they say yes, no? Conservation International say yes, and they gave us the freedom. Thank you to them. Luckily, they gave us all the freedom to explore, and they trust the process. And here's where I want to talk about an important part of the process, which is character selection. And this is one of the most intuitive and important parts of the process because it's what you're gonna follow, right? And for me, I know I have found the right person when I sense a kind of urgency. I need to speak, and you can see it in their eyes, in their energy, in how they look at you. And that tells me two things. One, once I put the camera in front of them, they won't freeze. And second, that they will be passionate about the story. They want to be heard. But I'm also looking for complexity. A great character doesn't just represent the issue. They embody its contradictions. Maybe they're struggling, maybe they have doubts, maybe they're in the middle of fighting something out. And that vulnerability creates depth. And depth creates connection. So that's exactly what happened when we met Dulce. She had this presence, like this confidence. She walked right up to us and said, "Who are you?" And we were like, "What?" And then she said, "Come, I'll show you my village," right? And we followed her, and she showed us around her home, her people, her world. And that's how we met her mother, Betty. She was one of the women working in the mangroves. And I asked her, "Do you take Dulce to harvest shells?" And she said, "No, she wants to, but I don't because she doesn't know how to swim." And I said, "Are you teaching her how to swim?" And she said, "Every afternoon." And in that moment, I knew we had a story. So we made a film about that, about Dulce learning how to swim. But learning how to swim was a way to show something much larger. It was like an excuse to tell the whole climate change, generational knowledge, resilience, the fragility of life, or that way of life, and of course, maternal love. No? Because in this community, surrounded by water, knowing how to swim is a life or death situation. It's survival. And Dulce, with 7 years old, still couldn't swim. She was afraid. A clip of the film. So you see a little bit of the relationship between them.
Ella está brava con yo.
No, no sabe, no. Porque usted nadie, no es mi hija. Pero sí triste. Porque usted no nada. Cuando los hijos no aprenden a nadar, la mamá se ponen triste. Ya que en cualquier momento pueden caer al agua y se ahogan. ¿Mm? Y más aquí nosotros que todo, para todo tenemos que embarcarnos. Y ahí no nos embarquemos, el agua sube y sube y sube. ¿Usted imagina que uno de estos días el agua suba bastante, el mar esté bravo, una puja grande y se caiga la casa? ¿Mm? Que estemos dentro de la casa nosotros. Ahí el que sabe nadar se salva, ¿sí o no? ¿Y el que no sabe?
Ella ahoga, pues.
Y ahí en este caso, ¿qué se va a ahogar?
Yo.
Ojalá que usted se quiera ahogar.
After that conversation, Dulce had the courage to start learning how to swim. And ultimately, she learned and joined the older women to harvest shells. No? Every big issue, like climate change, inequality, health, you name it, needs to be told through something tangible. Data informs, but stories stick. So when you're looking for your next campaign, don't just say we work in X issue. Ask yourself, who is someone living that experience? What's the small, intimate moment that make that big issue real? And our job as filmmakers is to find those moments. Sometimes it's just two of us with a camera, sometimes it's a big crew, but in the end, it's not about gear or budget. It's about intention. It's about seeing the story behind the issue and tell it in a way that people can feel. That's the power of film. And it's something every nonprofit has access to, because every nonprofit has stories worth telling. So this is what I wanted to share today, not just how we made a film, but how that film became a tool, a bridge, and a reason for people to care.
Like Billy mentioned, I'm the head of development for 76, so that means I deal a lot with the strategy and the planning and also the producing of our projects. So I'm going to share with you a 5-stage framework that we use, and it's just a best practice. And honestly, this is incredibly useful even if you're just filming something on your iPhone to upload to your social media channel. It's just a framework to move through the process. So I'll share that with you. And I just want to say also that I'll be speaking from a producer's lens primarily, but I'll also drop in just some opportunities that we see more from the development and marketing space as well. And the slogan that we use is just start at the end. It's not to back into something, because this is a fluid process and it's kind of recursive where you brainstorm, you look at feasibility, you go back to the creative, but it is a good place to start. What are you hoping to achieve? What impact? And this can be different. You know, we've worked with organizations that are hoping to reach new audiences that can give money, new audiences that can get involved and be volunteers. We've also worked with folks who want to move policy, maybe create rapport. Maybe they just want to increase their bona fides, which ties into raising money through donors. So often these goals are interwoven, but to just be clear on them can be very useful. Maybe you can't raise the money internally, so now you're going to look to external sources. That could either be new donors or new relationships with grant-giving organizations. So something to draw special attention to, if you're in scenario 2 or 3 where you're looking to raise money, Billy touched on this, Guy touched on it a little bit. It can be an awesome opportunity to have a really high quality contact that feels very organic and exciting with that grant giver or donor. It's a very specific ask. It can feel quite compelling, especially if you've got good materials like a deck. If you're going more the film festival route, obviously there's kind of a seductive, exciting nature of that. But even if you're not doing the film festival route, it can be a very tangible project for someone to get involved in, and it offers interesting touch points that some donors might be really excited about. Last thing to say on that is, even if the donor says no, you could even take a meeting expecting them to say no, but it's just a high quality way to get in the door. So we're sensitive to that strategy as well. Lastly, of distribution in terms of this process. So step 5, and ideally this was covered in your planning, right? Development, we talked about where it's going to go and why. And so now you're just executing. Internally, this might be your website, social media channels. If you're doing search engine marketing, and be handing it to that person for paid placements, showing it at your gala. External could be film festivals, on partner websites if you have a coalition going, or reaching out to editorial outlets. Depending on your project, this might be the most exciting place for donors. Again, whether it's a big donor giving a lot of money or you kind of more crowdsource it, you know, for some projects, getting 50 to 100 people to make small donations to earmark a fund for a film, very exciting and like a great excuse for engagement. But the distribution phase, very powerful to get people involved for the right project. All right, feel like we've covered a ton. Apologies for going so fast, but you will get a copy of this deck. Three main takeaways. One, having a plan, super helpful. We say fix it in pre-production because there used to be a saying of fix it in post-production. So it's just the opposite of that. Take your time. Think about why you're doing what you're doing. That will inform how to do it. And then it's this recursive process of adjusting until you get into pre-production, and then you kind of lock it in. Definitely think about repurposing content. Billy spoke about this, you know, ROI. If you're spending X amount of money, be very aware that a lot of this content could be evergreen. And if it's not evergreen, it can certainly still be spread out across formats. So it can be cut down into social cuts, teasers. Maybe it ends up as a supplement to your annual report. Maybe it ends up on your website. So yeah, we think of it as having like a media library, right? You could end the project and have a media library at your disposal for different use cases for at least months, if not years. And then lastly, the film is more than a film. We've been speaking about this the whole time. It's an opportunity. It's a vehicle to engage your supporters, to meet new supporters, to reinforce and communicate your mission, to build enthusiasm, build morale. Yeah, just a very powerful tool that's much more than the final film product itself. So with that, I'll turn it back to Billy. Thank you, guys.